Well, listen, we've got a great program this morning for everyone here. We'd like to thank, I think there's some Fruitport Trojans in the house somewhere. I think Mr. Ernie was going to bring over some Fruitport Trojans. We're happy to have you here. We're happy also to have many of our community members here. This is the 4th year in a row that we've put together a winter assembly for our athletes, sponsored by our Sailor Classic. We've got a few representatives from the Sailor Classic. I know Don's down here, Mr. Trigstead and his kids, and I don't know if the Bronzemas are here, or the Seawicks, or the Kemps, but please give a round of applause for our Sailor Classic for helping sponsor this event. You golfers in the house, I want to make sure that you guys contribute back when you graduate. Please participate in that Sailor Classic annual golf outing. It's a big deal and continues to bolster and help out our athletic department. We'd also like to thank sponsors from Edward Jones this morning for making this possible and bringing Mr. McFarland here. Please put your hands together for Edward Jones Investments. 4 years ago, we brought in Dr. Greg Dale, a sports psychologist from Duke University. 2 years ago, we brought in Coach Jack Sugars, a retired football coach from Oak Ridge, to speak to our athletes. And last year, we had all of our college female athletes come back and speak to our girls about the importance of conditioning and weightlifting in striving to achieve their goals. So this is now our 4th year in a row of doing this. It's a wonderful presentation. This morning, we've got 3 outstanding speakers, 2 groups. Mr. McFarland will speak second, right around 8:30. But I'd like to introduce our first keynote speakers of the morning. You probably know their son better than you know them. However, they still live in Virginia. They have another son coming up that attends Old Dominion, just like their other son did, who also plays baseball. At this time, please put your hands together for Richard and Kathy Verlander.
Good morning, everybody. Any Tigers fans out there? First, I'd like to thank the school, to thank the athletic department and the community and you students for sharing a little bit of your time with us today. We're certainly not, thanks for the intro, but I would hardly describe ourselves as excellent speakers. The speaker to follow us will be excellent, so I'm glad we got to go first. But just so you know, we spent most of our careers working at the phone company. My wife Kathy and myself both retired from the phone company, so most of my life I spent crawling under houses and climbing up telephone poles, and if you'd have told either one of us that we'd be having a book to write and speaking, you could have knocked us over with a feather. But that's also part of our message, and especially to your students here today, because our journey really has given us some perspective on what it takes to be successful. And for you young folks in the room, the sky is absolutely the limit. We really believe that every one of us is put on this earth with a gift, and you know, the folks that brought you here, the parents, the coaches, the teachers. Our message is all about celebrating those folks and the role that they play in helping you to figure out what that passion is, what that dream is. And it doesn't have to be a sport. You don't have to be a professional athlete. One thing what makes us happy is that both of our sons are doing what they love. Because, you know, it doesn't matter if you're rich or famous, if you're not happy in doing something that you love, you have a lot of people around you today that are very gifted. We talk about gifts. There are also gifted coaches, gifted teachers, those special people in our lives that we all have and had. And I think especially all of the adults in the room can look back and say, I had that great coach or that great teacher that made such a big difference in my own life. At the time, they always seemed like to me they were always the toughest teachers, and I didn't really necessarily think they were my best friend at the time. But looking back now, I think we really see those people, and in our book we attempt to celebrate those folks. So if you youngins in the audience wouldn't mind, please give a hand to the coaches and teachers and parents that are in the room today. So our story starts really 20-some years ago. Justin and I were out throwing a baseball in the front yard. I didn't know anything about baseball. I played guitar in a rock and roll band, and growing up, and Kathy was the athlete in the family. She played some tennis and swam, but we really, as far as sports, I like to play. I was somewhat athletic, but I never played organized sports. So when Justin started in Little League, we really had no idea that some 20 years later we'd be in 2008 in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, being named the Little League Parents of the Year. And so it was such a journey for us that, looking back, and this was really the reason for the book, came about as a result of us, after we retired, getting out and talking to groups just like this, and it suddenly occurred to us that we feel like we're so much smarter now than we were when we just started along, because so many life lessons along the way. And so when we accepted the award in Williamsport, which was so cool, I got to tell you, being there at the Little League World Series in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. I know you've seen it on ESPN, but being there is every bit as special as it looks on TV. The thing is, though, the veterans, if you will, of being spectators at the Little League, the big hill you see out in the outfield where everybody sits, people that have been going for a while bring lawn chairs, and they saw the front legs off short so they can sit them on the side of the hill, the back legs off short so they can sit them on the side of the hill so they sit straight. So it's pretty cool. But what we talked about that day, and what we continue to emphasize, is just the notion that it really does, as a chapter in our book, it takes a village to raise a ball player. And I would submit to you that it's a lot more than a ball player. It's about success. And so we talked about how we started out in Little League just like any other rookie parents, and how much we learned, and how special the relationships with special coaches and teachers and folks along the way that we were standing on the shoulders of there. And so and we really continue to try to stress that role that we all have a little piece in. And at the end of the day, I think every one of us, you young folks as well, you have the opportunity to, we talk about difference makers in sports. We all have the opportunity to be a difference maker in somebody's life. And if you think about that, especially as a parent, the opportunity that you have to help a young person to fulfill their dreams, that's one of the biggest responsibilities I think that we have. When Justin was in high school, he was a good athlete, but he certainly didn't stand out as, wow, this is going to be the next Cy Young winner. Not at all. Justin went undrafted out of high school. He and I sat on his sofa at home for 2 days and listened to 1,500 names called, and his was not one of them. So when he was 13 or 14, he was probably the number 4 pitcher on his travel team. So any young folks out here right now that are thinking, it's probably not going to be in the cards for me, don't you think by now I would know? Nonsense. There are classic late bloomers in every sense of the word, and the thing is to try to be the best you can be where you are right this moment. Don't get too far ahead of yourself. And so in every sense of the word, Justin was a regular, normal teenager. As a matter of fact, Kathy and I got to speak as part of our celebrations, I say, of key individuals. We actually sought out some of those folks for our book, and we went back and found Justin's second grade teacher. Her name is Marion Kramer, and she's actually in our book. And we went back and sought her out. She's still teaching after 20-something years. Justin was one of her very first classes, and she's still there today. And she told us that she still gets butterflies every morning before she goes to teach. I mean, this gives you an idea of the passion she has, and she works with inner city kids and just does a lot of great work. But she's the sort of individual that we really attempt to celebrate. And we went and talked to her class, which, I'm reasonably comfortable public speaking with my former career at the phone company. I had an opportunity to do that, but I got to tell you, I was scared to death to go talk to a group of second graders. Because the thing about second graders is they speak what's on their mind, and I thought, oh my gosh, these kids are going to eat me alive. But what they wanted to know and what we were so intrigued and touched by, it was kind of funny at the time, but the more we thought about it, they sat in the little chairs, and we sat in the little chairs, and they always said Justin Verlander. It's like they had to give him a title. They never said Justin. Did Justin Verlander have a bedtime? Did Justin Verlander have a lot of homework? Did Justin Verlander get in trouble? And all the girls and the boys especially, I expected, it's going to be all about how hard did Justin throw, how many home runs did he hit in Little League. None of them asked any baseball questions. And when we came out of that, what really struck me was what they're saying in their own little way is, was he ever like me? This guy that these little kids have up on this pedestal, this big star, was he ever just a normal kid like me? Did he have the same everyday issues that I had? And the flip side of that is, can I ever be like that? Well, I'm here to tell every one of you that that dream can come true. Justin was a normal kid in every way. He's still a normal young man in every way, except he has a gift. But having said that, that gift in that right arm, and there's lots of gifts, as I said. There's gifted nurturers, there's gifted healers, there's gifted teachers, and you need to nurture that gift, but you really need to work. Because we saw a lot of talented athletes, a lot of talented kids self-destruct. And a lot of our theme, a lot of our message in our book is about success and what it means to be successful. It's one thing to have a dream, but a dream is nothing without the other elements of success that come in with that, working hard and trying to do the right things. And one of the things we talk about in our book to young folks is control. I'm going to share with you real quickly something from our book that we like to emphasize. And again, this holds true, I think, for a lot more than being a baseball player. And if you take some of these things to heart, because you see, at the end of the day, what we've found out is that there's a lot more within your control than you know, in terms of being successful and being able to follow your dreams. And if we actually had the time today to put it up on a board and show you how much of what you would view as a key element to success is it in your control, I think you'd be surprised. It's probably about 90% at least. So what can I control? Work ethic. Can you outwork your competition? Good grades. Can I study harder? Will I qualify for a college scholarship? Fitness. Will you be at your best if you're in poor physical condition? Nutrition. Do you eat a healthy diet? Rest. Young people need 8 to 10 hours a night minimum to be at maximum performance on the field and in the classroom. How late are you up playing video games? Okay, it's important. And another thing we talk about is, how do I get noticed? We hear that a lot. I'm paraphrasing some of this because we don't want to go on all day here, but there's a few things that I think are really important, and we do get that question a lot. And so if you want to get noticed, no matter what you're doing, guys, if you're applying for a job, if you're applying for a scholarship, and just real quick, don't get too caught up in whatever the perceived A team or A school or gold standard is. When we look back, the people that surrounded our sons are much more important than the label. So where you go to school, where you go to work, the people that surround you on your path are so much more important in our estimation than whatever that perceived gold ring is. So how do you get noticed? When we go to camps, we see kids. It's easy to pick out the top 2 or 3 athletes. So, but we need a team. So, So you might ask yourself, so how do I get noticed? How do I stick out? By arriving early and staying late, by being a good teammate, by being sincere, by hustling, by cleaning out the dugout when no one is looking, by chasing foul balls, by making eye contact, by listening, by having your hat on straight and your pants pulled up, by saying thank you, by not wearing pajamas to practice. I saw that one time, I promise. By complimenting others, by being humble, by being a leader, by not following the crowd, by thinking for yourself, by doing more than is required, by being gracious in defeat, by having a firm handshake. Those are just a few things, and I know there are coaches and teachers around this room right now that are shaking their heads saying, I just really wish they knew how important that is, because that's what makes you stand out. You stand out by being special. It seems a simple equation. I'm going to ask my wife Kathy to come up for a minute and talk to you about a little bit about our journey as it relates to the balance we've tried to keep in our life and what it's sort of been like to try to juggle grades and school and homework and even now today a little how do we try to keep our lives a little bit normal, which is normal is our comfort zone. So this is my wife Kathy.
Thanks, guys. And I'm a little nervous. I don't talk in public too often, so this is kind of new to me. But what I'd like to talk about is how we balanced our lives back when our kids were growing up and how we balance it now. Our kids are 9 years apart. Justin's going to be 30 in a couple weeks, and Ben just turned 21. So it wasn't always easy because they weren't best friends when they were young. But we learned very quickly, because we did a lot of traveling with baseball, we learned very quickly not to sweat the small stuff. When we were gone all weekend long and we'd come home and our laundry wasn't done and our yard work was, the yard looked terrible. At first it would bother us, and then we thought, oh well, it's just yard work. It's just laundry. The time we just spent with our family was so important. So we really just learned, don't sweat the small stuff. And looking back, when we look back now at the times that we spent on the road and doing all the things that we did, because we both worked full-time back then, we realized that the time that we spent with our family was invaluable. You grow up so fast. Before you know it, you'll be off on your own. You won't be relying on your parents as much. But, so when you get together and you spend some time with your family, it's really important. And then you'll have families of your own and you'll really realize it. So a few of the things that we did that we really didn't know were great back then, but a few things that we did that were really important to Richard and I were, we tried to have family dinners together as much as possible, the four of us. And it's not always easy because everybody's running in 50 different directions, but at night, if we didn't have something going on, or if we did, we'd try to have family dinner. It could have been just boxed macaroni and cheese for all I cared. I just wanted to sit down and have a little discussion about the day. So looking back, that was really special. Another thing that we did that was really special, and I don't know if a lot of people still do this, we went to Grandma's every Sunday for Sunday dinner. Our kids didn't always like it. Sometimes they'd complain, but we'd drag them along. And my brother and my sister were there with their kids, so it was kind of special for us to just catch up on Sundays. And once we got there, our boys loved it. Normally we had a plastic ball and a plastic bat in the car, and we'd have a game in my mom's backyard. And looking back, how wonderful was that? We really enjoyed it. Another thing that people thought I was crazy, I loved road trips. When we had tournaments, some of my friends would complain, oh, we're going to be gone from Friday till Sunday night, and then we've got to go to work the next day. I loved road trips. It was a time. You had a captive audience. Your kids were in the car. Back when Justin was little, they didn't have all those handheld games, and also we would play games in the car. You probably never heard of these. Maybe your parents, some of the adults here. ABC game, license plate game. We had travel battleship. It wasn't a handheld game. It was a little thing with little pegs in it. We had fun. We played games. We sang songs. Justin loved doing that. We're board game people in our family. The Verlander Monopoly game is killer. Justin's good at everything. he's good at apples to apples, categories. We play it all. He usually wins everything we play. We don't know why. Sometimes we even try to rig a game. We'll talk about it before he comes in the room. We're gonna cheat, just so one of us could win. The only game that I know of that he's not good at is Scrabble. So he very rarely plays Scrabble because he can't win. It's kind of funny. Another thing that we used to like to do was practice baseball together, which sounds kind of weird when you have a 9-year difference in your boys, but we would go out on the field, just Verlander family practice time. And one little quick story that was funny, Justin used to like, for any baseball guys in here, Justin loved long toss. And long toss to anybody else is baseball players, I guess, limber up their arm. I really don't know why they do it, but it's good for their arm, and they get together and then they get farther and farther apart, and then they throw it as far as they can, stretches out, whatever. And you can tell I'm the mom. So he loved doing long toss, but none of us have a good arm. So it took Richard, me, and little Ben to get it back to Justin. Here he'd throw it from one goalpost to another, and then we'd have a little relay. And it was fun, and we kind of laughed at ourselves for how pitiful we were, and it was so funny to see how Justin could just throw that ball like it was nothing. It was, so back even then he had a great arm. Another kind of balance that we like to talk about is balancing priorities. So the first thing you should know about us is we live in a county called Goochland County. I know it sounds silly, but it's Goochland County. Justin labeled us the strictest parents in Goochland. He didn't say that as a compliment, but we said, thank you. In the Verlander household, there were a lot of rules. We just always had a lot of rules. We just felt like Justin had a lot of energy, so he needed to kind of be monitored, watched, whatever. Did you do your homework? Did you do this? Did you do that? You didn't have to remind him about his baseball uniform and having everything else, but everything else in his life, he had to be kind of taught how to focus. So in our house, we said what we meant and meant what we said. So if we said something, our kids knew we meant business. So looking back, we are more convinced than ever. Looking back makes things so much easier. Looking back, we are convinced that the structure and the balance in our lives were so important. We didn't know it at the time, but Justin and Ben, even today, they're very structured in their lives. Justin has a regimen that is unbelievable. And when we come visit him and it's the day before a game, he's got certain things he does. The night before a game, he's got other things. So he's very structured, and that's what helps for him to stay focused. One other thing that we always did in our house was make sure they knew that good grades, and schoolwork absolutely came first. And because we said what we meant and meant what we said, they knew that that's got to be their top priority as well. So one other thing is, our boys, this was very unpopular at the time, but our boys had a bedtime all the way through high school. I don't know that they knew anybody else that had a bedtime, but our boys did because they needed their sleep. If they didn't get enough sleep, they were bears in the morning, and they didn't perform as well, and it was very obvious to us. So they had a bedtime all the way through high school, and even in college. Even Ben now, he goes to bed, if he's got school early in the morning, which most baseball players have to get all their classes done before noon, he goes to bed early. So that's about it. I was just going to say that, structure for us was the key, and we didn't know it until recently, till we started talking about it, how important that was. And that's it.
Thank you.